Viewers, welcome back to Rise and Shine a Life here on Tobago Channel 5. At this time, we're chatting with Mr. Martin George, attorney at law. And this morning, our topic is the T.H.A. from negligence to liability. Mr. George, good morning and welcome.
Hi, good morning to you, and good morning, Eddie, and good morning to all viewers and in the wider diaspora.
Now, Mr. George, it's really good to have you on our program this morning. I mean, usually you come on, we talk about politics. Now, this is a different, a bit of a different spin on things. But this morning we're talking about Mr. Brinsley Shepherd's, the case between the T.H.A. and Mr. Brinsley Shepherd in relation to the deaths of his wife and son. The T.H.A. initially said, we're not responsible.
Well, the thing is, in fairness to the T.H.A., and I'll just let you know that the matter, it's not yet completed, so therefore all we can speak about is where they have made the concessions in terms of the liability, all right, because that's in the defense, which is a matter of public record. Right. What occurred is that initially their filed defense admitted to negligence. However, it did not specify what was the result of that negligence.
So you called on call for a report?
No, right. There's the report. We have not been shown the report, and I think their position is still that they don't want to reveal the contents of the report. However, we suspect that it may be, based on the contents of that report, that their position has now changed and they are now actually admitting liability for causing the deaths of the mother and the child through their negligence. So there has been an improvement in the position as far as our client is concerned, but as far as Tobago on the whole is concerned, in terms of seeing the contents of that full report, that position has not changed, in that the T.H.A. maintains a stance where they are saying they are going to hide, suppress, and conceal that report from the public.
And why is it very important that the report come forward as opposed to the fact that they are accepting liability?
Well, if you see the contents of the pathologist report that we have, which I'm sure must have informed part of the investigation, then you would be very concerned to have the full report come out in the public, because you're talking about a scenario where a mother goes in to deliver a baby, and part of the pathologist report indicates that there was an incision made to the mother's neck, and she bled to death from that incision.
I'm sorry.
Right, yes, you can't see the connection. Nobody can make that connection. So therefore, there's a whole lot that needs to be explained. That's why we are saying, and I want to make this point. When we make a call like this, it is not something that we are trying to be antagonistic to the medical professionals. What we are saying is that, look, we as the humble members of the public, we understand that mistakes can happen, things can go wrong. What we want is to get the truth, find out where things went wrong so we can correct it, and we can help you correct it so that they don't occur again in the future. Otherwise, you will keep putting the lives of Tobagonians at risk repeatedly, sometimes from the same mistake, if you don't even acknowledge, first of all, that there's a problem, if you don't recognize where the mistakes are and you don't admit it and put measures in place to correct it. And that's why we're saying the report is important. So that's why yesterday when I spoke to someone, I indicated that, look, at this point we are going to ask Mr. Orville London, as the Chief Secretary, the person who has ultimate responsibility over the T.H.A., to produce that report for the public of Tobago. The people of Tobago need to see that full report. Don't edit the report, don't change anything in it. Let us see exactly what Dr. Albert Prasad and his team prepared. Well, they would know. Dr. Albert Prasad and his team will know what they prepared. They must have a copy. They would keep a copy of what their final report was. So therefore, let us see the report, let us discuss it. The longer you keep hiding, let me tell you, this is an issue not just in Tobago, in Trinidad. If you saw the news last night on CNMG, right, which is a national television station, their opinion poll, which they ran throughout their news broadcast last night, was on the issue of whether this report into those maternal and child deaths at Scarborough Hospital should be made public. And the 90% of the viewers nationally. This is not just a Tobago issue, and that's why I keep saying that we must take this and understand the level of responsibility that is attributed to this issue. Nationally, 90% of the viewers of that show said, make the report public. In other words, let us get the information out there, let us deal with it. We've had situations.
But Mr. George, as you're going along, after the intervention, you said you called on the Chief Secretary to intervene and to see whether the report can be had. If that is not successful, how can you, what is your next move? What do you intend to do to
well, there are two other options we still have. We can make an application before the judge to ask for specific disclosure of that report in these proceedings, or you can file separate proceedings, maybe under the Freedom of Information Act or otherwise, to ask for that report to be produced. But if you recall, there was a judgment earlier this year of Justice T.H.A. in another matter that we did against the Tobago Regional Health Authority, whereby he said, hiding and giving patients a difficulty or a runaround, that's the term he used, to get their records and documents is not correct, and he chastised the T.H.A. for that process whereby they were telling people, well, if you want to get information or get records, file an application under the Freedom of Information Act. Justice Frank Sipasad, chastised the T.H.A. in particular for that practice. So therefore, in the same way, if this is a report that the T.H.A. has, which they are refusing to make public, then of course, as I say, you have the option to apply under the Freedom of Information Act, but you shouldn't have to have recourse to that when you have a court judgment which clearly says that that type of practice is not to be encouraged, it's not to be condoned. Make the information public. That's the only way we can improve and get better. If we know where we went wrong, we acknowledge it and we say, look, these are the steps we're going to take to make things better.
But what about the patient and doctor confidentiality issue?
No, the point is, in terms of what you are making public, you are not going into any patient or doctor confidentiality issue, because what you would do, you would use generic terms. You would say like patient X, Dr. Y. So you can simply deal with it that way without going out into the public with people's confidential information. I mean, of course, if you have filed a matter in court, a court record is a public document, then that's a different issue. But if you're talking about that report, then you can simply deal with it that way. And of course, internally or with the health authorities, they can then deal with the specific doctor and say, well, okay, look, you did this wrong or that wrong or the other. But if you look at our history in Trinidad and Tobago, we have moved past this type of hiding and blocking and ducking. In Trinidad, I could tell you, doctors are now lining up to give evidence against fellow doctors. The culture has changed. The idea of, this closed shop where you keep hiding and protecting, and you basically are willing to go to the lengths to not reveal the truth about mistakes that your fellow practitioners have made. That has changed. That has changed totally. We have, let me tell you, even in the Medical Complaints Council, which I said we are going to be forming, right? And we've sent in the registration papers. We should have it finalized within a week or two. We've had so many medical professionals, doctors, nurses, vets, persons who, are all in the medical sciences field, who have volunteered already. They want to come on board because you know why? They recognize that for the good of the medical profession as a whole, if we bring things out to light and we examine where mistakes were made, we can then improve the system for the benefit of everybody. And that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking of the T.H.A. and the T.R.H.A. Bring this document out. Let the public in Tobago see it. Let's examine it. Let's be objective and analytical and progressive. You're not doing it for the sake of criticizing people. You're doing it to see where things went wrong and where we can improve.
Do you know of any similar instances where a client has reached this far in terms of we've had infant deaths in the past,
yes,
several years ago. We've had mothers dying as a result of whatever the case may be. We never knew. A lot of persons never knew, but a lot of persons, a lot of relatives and family members said, you know what, this is what they've said. But somehow I believe that there was more to it. Maybe for whatever reason they didn't have the money, the support. They just left it alone. But do you know of any other person besides Mr. Shepherd who has reached as far as this?
Well, in our Port of Spain office, we're dealing with one that we filed in court, the T.H.A matter. All right, we're dealing with that. And in that matter, there was also an investigation and a finding, and that report was made public, I dare say, you know, so we actually filed that report as part of our court proceedings. All right, so that report was made public. So I don't know why the T.H.A thinks that they should treat this report differently. There was also the Crystal Ram Sumer, the young lady who died,
right.
You know, while giving birth. Then, of course, you have other situations such as the Rana Ramlal versus Southwest Regional Health Authority. That's the one where, remember, Dr. Patricia Dionarine was the you know, obstetrician who performed the procedure whereby, you know, she was tugging, and, you know, Ms. Ramlal was in so much pain, she actually discharged herself from the facility. So you've had situations where persons have been able to come full circle in terms of a claim such as this. But of course, nothing can replace the loss of a loved one, particularly, well, in this case, the loss of two loved ones, your wife and your child at the same time. So, you know, at this point, we have to move on to the question of assessment of damages to try to give some measure of monetary compensation. But at the end of the day, the pain and hurt that someone will feel inside, none of us could fully empathize or understand what someone else is feeling in that regard.
And Mr. George, does or will the information in the report, or what effect will the information in the report have on the eventual, you know, compensatory package for the complainant?
Well,
or would it have anything at all?
And that's exactly the point. That's the reason why we intend to ask the judge to have the report produced as part of the proceedings in court, because we are of the view that there must be things in that report which would speak to the conduct, the practices, the procedures which were applied in this matter, which of course would impact upon the quantum of compensation. So that's the approach we are taking. However, I must insist, our desire for this report to be publicized is not simply for this case. There's a greater good at stake here. In other words, the people of Tobago deserve better. We deserve to have that faith and confidence. I've been speaking to people and they were saying that, look, based on what they are hearing, they are now afraid to go to the Scarborough Regional Hospital, which should not be the case. And this is what we're trying to tell the T.H.A. If any officials of the T.H.A. are listening, understand what I'm saying now. We don't want to be at war with the T.H.A. We don't want to be afraid of the T.H.A. and its facilities. We, the public, we want to be able to embrace the T.H.A. But similarly, the T.H.A. must understand that openness, transparency, honesty, and professionalism must be their hallmarks. Otherwise, there will always be that mistrust and people will feel, look, you are taking a risk to go to their facilities.
Mr. George, let me just ask you something here. According to your document, a hysterectomy was performed? Is it that a hysterectomy was performed? But I'm still trying and I'm no medical expert here. I know nothing about the medical field. But what I'm getting is that you indicated earlier that an incision happened to have been made on the neck, which caused the...
Well, this is the report we have from the pathologist.
I understand that,
and
but
this is not contradicted by the T.H.A. So while we understand that, yes, they have admitted liability for causing the deaths, we are saying there must be more. In other words, we must get to the bottom of this mystery, because no one can feel any sense of closure or satisfaction to simply say, okay, we've admitted liability, we're going to pay you. No, we also want to know, why did this go wrong? and how can we prevent it going wrong again in the future and hopefully save another mother and another baby from going through this scenario.
One feels as though Mr. Shepherd is carrying the weight of all Tobagonians on his shoulders with regards to this situation occurring another time around. Like I said, nobody that I know of in Tobago has reached this far, has said, I'm going to make a stand.
Like
I
this,
am going
yes.
to...
No, well, the thing is, I mean, it is the type of scenario whereby it cried out for some turning point in our treatment of our health sector in terms of how they treat with members of the public and how they deal with these situations. So it may be the flashpoint, it may be the reason that is going to bring about some significant improvement, and if it is, then so be it. But he would much rather have his wife and child here
Definitely.
than to be a hero for this cause, if you understand. He didn't choose this. But if something good can come out of it, which would improve healthcare standards for all Tobagonians and all persons who have to use the facilities at the T.H.A, then I think that's a good thing.
How much time are you willing to give the T.H.A to come forward, or the T.H.A or the Chief Secretary to come forward with that report?
With the report, well, the point is the matter comes up in court, and we will be making the application for disclosure of the document. So depending on the ruling of the court in that regard, we can then look at taking other steps, maybe by way of a separate action under the Freedom of Information Act. But I really don't think, let me tell you, I am convinced that Mr. Orville London, being a responsible, respected gentleman that he is, and someone that all Tobagonians look up to as a father figure, a grandfather figure, someone, you know, with that, you give Mr. London that respect. You know that he loves Tobago, he loves Tobagonians, he will do the right thing. He will make that report public. We are confident that he will do the right thing for all Tobagonians. And every time we see him, we must call upon him. Uncle Orville, where's the report? Help us. Show us the report, Uncle Orville. Help us. Let us see what we can do to improve health care for Tobago. Please, Uncle Orville, that is our prayer to you today.
Okay. Mr. George, let me read this one for you because I want you to do some explaining for this one, number 16. As regards the particulars of pain and suffering in particular in subparagraph 1, the defendant neither admits or denies